What if every painful moment you've ever lived through wasn't a punishment? What if it was preparation? What if the silence you prayed into, the doors that slammed shut, the people who left without explanation, were never signs that you were forgotten? What if they were the process? And what if the next 7 days are about to reveal why? Somewhere above you right now in a sky most people never look up to see, something ancient is happening. Some call it symbolic. Some call it spiritual. Some simply call it timing. But across centuries, across cultures, across generations of people who felt exactly like you feel right now, this window in time has meant one thing: alignment. Stay with me until the end of this video, because the final revelation changes everything. Let's be honest with each other for a moment. You've prayed for things that never came. You've asked, "Why me?" in the middle of the night, when no one was around to hear it, and the ceiling gave you no answers. You've loved people who left. You've stayed loyal to situations that drained you. You've smiled in rooms full of people while quietly falling apart on the inside. Maybe you felt invisible. Maybe you felt like life keeps handing you delay after delay, while everyone else seems to be moving forward. Maybe you've whispered, more than once, "I don't understand what I'm doing wrong." Here's the truth almost nobody says out loud. You weren't doing anything wrong. Some things in life are not meant to make sense while you're living through them. Some things only make sense when you look back. And many believe we are standing at the edge of one of those moments right now. Picture a woman named Elena. Not her real name. But her story, in one form or another, belongs to millions of people. 2 years ago, Elena lost the job she'd built her entire identity around. The termination email came on a Tuesday morning, 3 sentences long, cold and final. No warning, no explanation that felt like enough. That same year, the relationship she thought would become her forever ended in a parking lot, under fluorescent lights, with words she never saw coming. Her friends stopped calling as often. Her savings account thinned. Her reflection in the mirror started to look like someone she didn't recognize anymore. She remembers lying on her bedroom floor one night, staring at the ceiling, asking a question she couldn't answer. Was any of this ever going to mean something? She didn't know it then. But she was standing in the middle of a season many people go through right before something shifts. A season of unraveling that quietly becomes a season of rebuilding. She didn't have a name for what was happening to her. She was about to learn one. There's a period of time, occurring once a year, that ancient civilizations paid extraordinarily close attention to. Egyptian astronomers charted it. Mystics wrote about it in hushed language. Modern spiritual teachers describe it as one of the most energetically significant windows of the entire calendar. They call it the Lion's Gate portal. And no, this isn't about magic. This isn't about a switch flipping in the sky that rearranges your life overnight. But here's what almost nobody realizes. Many traditions believe this window represents something deeply symbolic, a kind of cosmic doorway between who you've been and who you're becoming. Some say it amplifies clarity. Some say it intensifies whatever has already been quietly building beneath the surface of your life. Some say it simply gives you permission to finally see what you've been too afraid, or too busy, or too heartbroken to look at directly. Whatever you believe, and it's all right to hold healthy skepticism, millions of people have described the same strange sensation during this window. A feeling of being on the edge of something. Stay with me, because the biggest surprise in this story comes later. Here is something worth sitting with. Across many spiritual traditions, real transformation is described the same way, again and again. It begins invisibly. long before anything changes on the outside. Your circumstances, your relationships, your opportunities. Something shifts on the inside first. A seed doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform its growth for an audience. It works in complete darkness, underground, unseen, for far longer than anyone watching would have patience for. And only after that hidden work is done does anything break the surface. Many believe that difficult seasons, the ones that feel like punishment, like failure, like being left behind, are actually functioning the same way. Not as evidence that you are falling apart, but as evidence that something is being built in you that could not have been built any other way. Consider the possibility, just for a moment, that your hardest season wasn't happening to you. It was happening for you. Think about the opportunity you didn't get, the one that felt devastating at the time. Think about the relationship that ended in silence, with no closure, no final conversation to make sense of it. Think about the nights you sacrificed sleep, comfort, certainty, quietly, without anyone clapping for you, without anyone even noticing. Think about the version of you who kept showing up anyway, who kept trying, who didn't quit, even when quitting would have been so much easier. That version of you was not weak. That version of you was under construction. Every missed opportunity may have been redirecting you. Every painful ending may have been clearing space. Every silent sacrifice may have been the very thing shaping the strength you're going to need for what's coming next. You didn't just survive those seasons, you were being formed by them. Now here is where the story gets strange. People who have paid close attention to this 7-day window, across years, across cultures, described 3 recurring signs. Signs that seem to appear right before something in their life quietly begins to change. The first sign involves something breaking. Not violently, but a pattern, a habit, a relationship dynamic that simply stops working the way it used to. The second sign involves something returning, a memory, a person, an old idea you thought you'd buried, suddenly resurfacing, demanding attention. And the third sign, we'll come back to that one. Because I promise you, its meaning will make sense by the end of this video, and it will hit differently than you expect. For now, just remember these 3 signs: a breaking, a returning, and something else. Keep watching, because everything changes after the third sign. Almost nobody notices what happens right after the third sign appears. Most people are too busy reacting to their circumstances to notice the pattern underneath them. But the ones who do notice, they describe the same thing over and over, in different words but the same meaning. They say it felt like waking up inside their own life. We'll get there. But first, you need to understand what almost broke Elena completely, and what saved her instead. Elena didn't believe in any of this at first. A friend had mentioned the Lion's Gate portal in passing, almost like a joke, over coffee. Elena laughed it off. She had bigger problems than the stars. But that night, unable to sleep, she found herself outside on her apartment balcony, looking up anyway. Just looking, not expecting anything. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't feel the need to fix anything. She didn't feel the panic that usually lived in her chest. She just felt still. She didn't know it yet, but that stillness was the beginning of the first sign. Something in her was breaking, quietly. Not her, but the pattern she'd been trapped in, the constant urgency, the belief that she had to force every outcome or lose everything. For the first time, she let go. Just for one night. She had no idea what that single moment of surrender was about to set into motion. Here's something almost nobody talks about. Fear doesn't usually look like fear. It looks like busyness. It looks like overthinking. It looks like staying in the job, the relationship, the routine that's slowly draining you, because the unknown feels more dangerous than the pain you already know. Fear disguises itself as practicality, as loyalty, as just being realistic. And because of that disguise, most people walk right past the very opportunities that could change everything. Not because the opportunity wasn't real, but because it didn't look like what they expected transformation to look like. They expected a lightning bolt. What they got was a quiet nudge, a strange coincidence, a gut feeling they talked themselves out of. The biggest surprise almost nobody realizes is that the doorway rarely announces itself loudly. It usually whispers. Across history, certain symbols keep reappearing in stories about transformation. Stars, representing guidance through darkness, small points of light that never stop shining even when everything around them goes black. Doors, representing choice, threshold, the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Clocks, representing the strange, non-linear nature of timing. The idea that some things simply cannot happen before you're ready for them, no matter how badly you want them sooner. Dreams, often described as messages from the parts of ourselves we don't access while fully awake. And intuition, that quiet, persistent feeling in your chest that speaks before your logical mind has time to argue with it. Many believe this 7-day window intensifies all 5. Sharper intuition, vivid dreams, a stronger pull toward decisions you've been avoiding. Whether or not you believe the sky has anything to do with it, ask yourself honestly. Have you felt anything shifting lately? Here's the part that carries real weight. Windows like this one don't stay open forever. Not because opportunity disappears. Growth is always available, in some form, at any time. But because clarity like this intensity of internal noise, finally quieting down enough to hear yourself think, doesn't come along every day. Many believe that if this window passes without reflection, without honesty, without at least pausing to ask the hard questions, life simply continues on autopilot. The same patterns, the same avoidance, the same slow drift. This isn't about fear. It isn't about urgency for urgency's sake. It's about not wanting you to miss the quiet invitation being placed in front of you right now, disguised as an ordinary week, in an ordinary year, in an ordinary life that might be about to become anything but ordinary. Elena stood on that balcony for 4 more nights. Each night, the same stillness. Each night, a memory resurfacing that she thought she'd buried. An old dream she'd shelved years ago to chase something more practical. That was the second sign. Something returning. By the 5th night, she finally admitted something to herself she'd been avoiding for 2 years. She hadn't lost her job and her relationship at the same time by accident. She had been living a life that was never actually hers. She had built it to please people who were no longer even in her life to see it. And here is the turn almost nobody expects. The portal was never going to change the world around her. It was changing her. The job wasn't coming back. The relationship wasn't coming back. Nothing on the outside needed to be undone. Because the version of Elena who needed those things to feel whole was the one being transformed. This is where the real story always lives. Not in the circumstances, in the person walking through them. Courage doesn't feel like confidence. It feels like doing the thing anyway while shaking. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It just stops handing your peace over to people who already left. Patience isn't passive waiting, it's active trust. Trust that the timing you can't control is still working, even in the silence. Gratitude doesn't require everything to be perfect. It just requires you to notice what's still standing. And confidence, real confidence, isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move forward with the fear sitting quietly beside you instead of letting it drive. Elena didn't wake up one morning suddenly fixed. Nobody does. But she started making one different choice a day, one honest conversation, one boundary she used to be too afraid to set, one old dream she finally gave herself permission to try again. Remember the 3 signs. The first, something breaking, an old pattern finally losing its grip. The second, something returning, a forgotten dream, a buried truth, resurfacing right when you need it most. And the third sign, the one I promised would change everything, is recognition. The moment you finally look at your own reflection, not the job title, not the relationship status, not the version of yourself other people expected, and you recognize who you actually are underneath everything that fell apart. That recognition is the real gate. Not a date in the sky, not a symbol in an ancient text. The portal, many believe, was never a place you travel to. It's a moment you arrive at within yourself. Every setback Elena lived through, the job, the heartbreak, the silence, the loneliness, didn't happen so she could end up exactly where she started. It happened so she could become someone who was finally strong enough, honest enough, and awake enough to walk through the door that had been open the entire time. A year later, Elena doesn't describe her life as fixed. She describes it as honest. She still has hard days. She still doesn't have every answer. But she no longer mistakes difficulty for punishment. She looks back now at the woman crying on the floor of an empty apartment, and instead of pity, she feels something closer to gratitude. Because that woman didn't know it yet, but she was already becoming who she needed to be. And if you're watching this right now, in the middle of your own unraveling, your own confusion, your own silent nights asking questions that don't seem to have answers, consider the possibility that you are not falling apart. You might be getting ready. Here's what almost nobody tells you at the end of stories like this one. The 7 days themselves aren't the point. What happens after them is. Some people will finish this video and go right back to the noise, the busyness, the same patterns they've always known. That's all right. There's no judgment here. Everyone moves at their own timing. But some of you are going to close this video and sit in silence for a moment. And in that silence, something quiet is going to surface. A truth you've been avoiding, a decision you've been postponing, a version of yourself you've been too afraid to become. What happens after these 7 days might become the beginning of your next chapter. Nobody can tell you what that chapter holds. Not with certainty. Not with guarantees. But consider, just for a moment, what might be possible if you stopped resisting whatever season you're in right now, and started asking what it might be trying to teach you instead. Before you go, sit with one question. Not to answer it out loud, not to perform an answer for anyone, just for yourself. What has your hardest season taught you? Not what it took from you, what it taught you. There's a difference, and most people never stop long enough to find it. If any part of this resonated with you, I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe you've lived through your own version of Elena's story. Maybe you're in the middle of it right now. Whatever season you're in, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply share what you've survived. Sometimes the door that refused to open was protecting you from walking into the wrong life. Somewhere right now, the sky is quietly shifting the way it does every year during this window. Some will look up and see nothing but stars. Others will look up and feel something they can't quite explain. Whatever you believe, whatever you carry into these next 7 days, know this. The hardest chapters of your story were never wasted. They were preparing the person who would eventually walk through the door still ahead of you. The journey was never about reaching the portal. It was about becoming the person who was ready to walk through it.